Okay, almost. Okay, thank you. So I think now we can start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone from United Nations in New York, and welcome to our multi-stakeholder dialogue on the role of technology in advancing sport for development and peace. My name is Amin Lamrabat. I'm an information officer at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA. I'm very pleased to facilitate the first part of this important event. But before we get started, I would like to go over a few practical items. The first part of the event will consist of a plenary session. The second part will consist of 3 thematic breakout sessions. And in the final and third part, the plenary will be reconvened and the thematic interventions will be briefly presented by our rapporteurs. The presentations also will be followed by an open floor discussion in which participants may ask focused questions or make comments related to the presented thematic interventions. You will also have the opportunity to ask questions through the Q&A function in Zoom. And please also use the chat box just for comments or sharing resources on the topic of this event. The event will be recorded and live streamed on our YouTube channel. The link will be available on the chat. I will ask all the participants to mute their sound and keep their camera on if possible when they don't speak. So thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of UNDESA, again, we would like to thank all of our partners, speakers, and audience who are joining us today to discuss this important issue related to the role of technology in advancing sport for development and peace. UNDESA is committed to supporting a coordinated effort for advancing sport for development and peace. Sport is about participation. It brings individuals, communities, and countries together. Sport can catalyze, build, and strengthen multi-stakeholders networks for sustainable development and peace goals. This event has been conceived to raise awareness about sport for development and peace in the context of the United Nations Decade of Action to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Today, with the current COVID-19 pandemic, the world had to adapt to a new reality in which the usual means of practicing sports and physical activities with others was no longer possible. So COVID-19 has raised health-related concerns about sport, recreation, and play spaces. Digital technologies have become more central to the world of sport, playing a critical role in enabling many to stay active. So today we have a rich agenda and a group of excellent stakeholders with us from different sectors and experiences to share with us new research, good practices, and to identify challenges, opportunities, and policy recommendations on the critical role that technology can play in advancing sport as an enabler of development and peace. So without further ado, we will now begin the plenary session. It's my great honor to introduce Ms. Daniela Bass. She's the director of our division for inclusive social development at UNDESA, who will deliver her opening remarks. Ms. Bass, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, excellencies, dear colleagues, distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen. I would really like to warmly welcome you all to this multi-stakeholder dialogue, as our colleague Amin just introduced, the information officer in DESA and the ISD. He explained the role of technology in advancing sport for development and peace. And I want to thank you for joining today. This dialogue has been organized, as it has been mentioned, by the Division for Inclusive Social Development that I lead in the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESA. A few words about the context in which today's meeting is taking place. Let's go back to 2015. In 2015, member states, in the declaration of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, recognized the sport as an important enabler for sustainable development, peace, promotion of respect, and tolerance. 2 years later, in 2017, the United Nations Secretary General closed the office of his Special Advisor on Sport in Geneva, Switzerland, assigning the mandate on sport for development and peace to the United Nations Secretariat, and asked DESA to implement it through the division I lead. As for the definition of sport, well, I would suggest let's us agree to refer to the UNESCO Kazan Plan of Action of 2017, in which the term sport is used as a generic term comprising sport for all: physical play, recreation, dance, organized, casual, competitive, traditional, and indigenous sports and games in their diverse forms. 1 year after, we go now to the 6th of December 2018. The United Nations General Assembly Resolution 73/24 on sport as an enabler of sustainable development recognized that sports, the arts, and physical activity have the power to change perceptions, prejudices, and behavior, as well as to inspire people, break down racial and political barriers, combat discrimination, and diffuse conflict. As for the topic of today's dialogue, it corresponds to the resolution on sport just adopted on the 1st of December 2020 this year, which invites member states to work together with the United Nations system and other stakeholders to increase engagement and cooperation with one another, to harness digital technology to advance sport as a tool to achieve the sustainable development goals, and in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, to support sport and physical activity at home while broadening access to sport training and physical activity opportunities via online platforms. So what the United Nations Department for Economic and Social Affairs does on sport? Well, as for DESA, it has, since 2017, housed the substantive portfolio on sport for development and peace in the UN system. Guided by the United Nations Action Plan on Sport, DESA has been working to maximize the positive contribution of sport through its support.
Daniela, sorry, you are muted.
This is, I didn't do anything, but technology. We're talking about technology, right? So can you tell me until you could hear me? So in December 2018, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution on sport as an enabler of sustainable development. And it recognized that sport, the arts, and physical activity have the power to change perceptions, as I said, prejudices and behaviors, as well as to inspire people, break down racial and political barriers, combat discrimination, and diffuse conflict. And nowadays, what happens? As for the topic of today's dialogue, it corresponds to the resolution on sport just adopted on the 1st of December 2020, which invites member states to work together with the UN system and other stakeholders to increase engagement and cooperation with one another, to harness digital technology to advance sport as a tool to achieve the sustainable development goals, and in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond, to support sport and physical activity at home while broadening access to sport training and physical activity opportunities via online platforms. So what does the UN Department for Economic and Social Affairs do on sport? Well, as for this department, DESA, and our division, it has since 2017 housed the substantive portfolio on sport for development and peace in the UN system. So we are guided by the UN Action Plan on Sport. And DESA has been working to maximize the positive contribution on sport through its support for intergovernmental processes. And when we present the Secretary General report on sport, It's presented at the General Assembly, which is the biggest intergovernmental process the United Nations serves, through research and through thought leadership, capacity development work, and partnerships. As for the division per se, well, we have organized this present multi-stakeholder dialogue, just to give you an example about the activities we deal with related to sport and physical activities, peace and development. And this is a part of the efforts, as I said, in the context of the UN Decade of Action to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals by bringing together stakeholders from different sectors with the diverse backgrounds and experiences to share new research and good practices and to identify challenges, opportunities, and policy recommendations on a key issue: the critical role that technology can play in advancing sport as an enabler of development and peace. And another example, last May, DESA issued a policy brief on sport and COVID-19 pandemic. And it's going to be produced on the digital technologies for social inclusion next year in 2021. And another example of what we do, the ISD, this is the acronym of the Division for Inclusive Social Development, will soon launch and disseminate a new background paper on new technologies and families. And we are today also launching a major effort that we did together with many other UN entities, that is the advocacy brief on sports-related matters. So next year, in February, the Commission for Social Development, which is a functional commission established by the United Nations Economic and Social Council of Ministers, will hold its 59th session. And it will include a focus on socially just transition towards sustainable development, the role of digital technologies on social development, and that there will be for all. So we invite you to network and join hands to be among the organizers of side events at the margins of the Commission next February. And please do feel free to contact us. I believe the deadline to propose events is on the 12th of January next year. Therefore, today's dialogue will be an important contribution to the Commission for Social Development next February, as well as to the delivery of the United Nations Decade of Action. Well, we could ask ourselves, what is the role of technology in advancing sport for development and peace, and in accelerating the implementation of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the agenda, of the 2030 Agenda? And here we can just mention a few very briefly. Sustainable Development Goal 1, eradicate poverty. We know that sport plays a major role in that. Sustainable Development Goal 3, or SDG as we call them, about health and well-being. 4, sport and education. 8, employment, sport and employment. 10, reducing inequalities. Sport plays a major role in that. 5, for instance, is one way of reducing inequalities when we think of gender balance, the SDG 5. We have the SDG 16, social justice, institutions, peace. And very important, the last one, the SDG 17, partnerships and international cooperation. And this is what we want to achieve also today. See, at the United Nations, both sport and technology are really in our agenda. Now, very quickly, in terms of sport, it is widely acknowledged that sport is a major contribution to economic and social development, and it is very important also on issues related to the environment. We know it can serve as a source of empowerment, inclusion, and inspiration, bringing communities around the world together in its celebration. Sport raises the confidence and the well-being of participants and can empower all segments of society, including those who tend to be left behind, such as women, girls, youth, persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, older persons, refugees, and displaced persons. Last year, we spoke about homeless people, and we found out how sport plays a major role also in promoting integration and inclusion. of homeless people, so to be still part of the community. See, sport helps members of a society to grow together and contribute to functioning democracy with trust in the rule of law and public institutions. The UN system is actively engaged in promoting and supporting the use of sport, therefore, to advance development and peace. And indeed, today, as I said earlier on, we are launching an interagency advocacy brief co-led by UN Women, which is entitled Recovering Better, Sport for Development and Peace, Reopening, Recovery, and Resilience post-COVID-19. And this brief was collaboratively drafted, as I mentioned earlier on, by sport focal points in a number of UN entities, including the World Health Organization, the UN Office for Drugs and Crime, UNESCO, the ILO, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNICEF, the UN Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children, UN Climate Change, the UN Environment Programme, and the UN Office of Counterterrorism. You see, the UN is working united, and the brief sets out a vision to support the reopening, recovery, resilience of sport. And in doing so, it demonstrates the role that sport has in contributing to the achievement of individual sustainable development goals, such as those few I mentioned earlier on, and to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development as a whole. In terms of technology, well, the UN has for many years now been mindful of both the opportunities and challenges that technology change can bring. And of course, we are here today because we know that today, as set out in the background note that has been shared, the practice of sport is deeply entwined with the use of technology, which influences so many aspects of how it is carried out. For example, the equipment used, how athletes and fans travel to matches, and how it is covered by the media and enjoyed by sport fans from afar. So similarly, technology, and recently digital technology, play an increasing central role in facilitating the use of sport as a means to advance development and peace. For example, technology allows organizations across the globe to connect and exchange best practices in networks such as Street Football World or Laureus Sport for Good. And it contributes to the creation of affordable and durable sport equipment, such as the One World Football. It can increase access to sport for all, and we will have some participants today talking about that, including through the development of assistive technologies, such as those promoted, utilized, and provided by Motivation in the UK and Jumping Kids in South Africa. So you see, it's the whole globe engaged in this. Unfortunately, as mentioned earlier on, we cannot discuss the role of technology in advancing sport for development and peace without considering the new reality the world has faced this year in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. For example, global events such as the Olympic and the Paralympic Games were postponed, and many community-based organizations stopped their activities. So in the absence of in-person opportunities for sport and physical activity, the use of technology has become even more central in the world of sport, playing a critical role in enabling many to stay active, for example, by participating in remote online classes or utilizing dedicated fitness apps and the wearable devices. Indeed, we have seen very rapid innovation from the sport community in this regard. Access to such opportunity, however, has been far from being universal. As 3.6 billion people, many from poor communities and in developing countries, remain offline, and much work remains to overcome the world digital divide. Lastly, I have to inform you that yesterday we received an email a communication from the keynote speaker for the meeting of today, who had to cancel at the last moment her presence to this dialogue. Regrettably, Her Excellency Madame Kirsty Coventry, the Minister of Youth, Sport, Arts and Recreation in the cabinet of Zimbabwe, and she is also former Olympic swimmer, had to attend a meeting of ministers that coincides with our event. So we do hope to benefit of her experience and knowledge in the near future. Therefore, what we have decided is to show the essence of today's multi-stakeholder dialogue on sport and technology through 3 videos. The first video is from the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. It's entitled "Sport is My Life," and it is a prelude to sport physical activities, and it shows its role in enhancing values of strength, resilience, courage, team spirit, and more, and how it positively impacts and benefits all, in particularly young generations. The second video has as a speaker the United Nations Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Fabrizio Hochschild Drummond. Among his very important roles presently, he is also supporting the United Nations Secretary General on issues related to frontier technologies. And the third short and very powerful video was shared by the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, in June 2019, last year, during a side event, 1 Billion Voices Making the Invisible Visible, at the margins of the Conference of the State Parties on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And it shows in a pragmatic way how technology makes sport and physical activities inclusive, leaving no one behind. So apologies if this event and its videos are not fully accessible. We shall make more and more efforts to improve accessibility and usability at our best in the future, once we have also more funds available. Apologies. So let us aim to be inclusive for all people of all ages and of all abilities to enjoy sport and physical activities, and how important technology can be also in this area. So excellencies, dear colleagues, distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen, apologies if I spoke too much, but there is so much to be said. I wish to thank you again for your participation today, and we look forward to engaging in discussions with you and to hearing your thoughts on how technology is and can contribute to best supporting the role of sport in advancing development and peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bass, for your insightful remarks. So we will start playing the videos. So I'll start with the first one. Sport is my life. Thank you.
It is part of my life. It shows me the way to go.
It supported me from the beginning, and when things didn't work out well, it taught me not to give up and kept me going.
It helped me understand people and to get real friends.
Friends who can be trusted and who also trust me.
It helped me understand that all people are equal. It made me stronger. It taught me it's not about being strong or weak, about winning or losing. It's about discovering ourselves. It gave me a lot.
We share our victories with it.
We will always be together.
Sport is my life.
Thank you. So we will play now the second video. Just 1 second.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this year, as we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, we've rapidly moved into a completely new era. The rate of adoption of the internet has vastly outpaced that of any earlier technology. Since the commercialization of the internet 25 years ago, almost 4 billion people now use it. And it has transformed our lives in countless ways we often take for granted. Today, we find ourselves at an inflection point. It is clear that we cannot reap the full benefits of the digital age without mobilizing global cooperation to better overcome the continuing digital divide and to mitigate potential harms. In this respect, we are confronted with 3 key questions. How will we ensure digital technologies advance the global development agenda for the most disadvantaged and do not fuel inequalities? How can we ensure that digital technologies safeguard human rights and individual security as opposed to undermining them? And what are the best global means of bolstering national and regional efforts to ensure digital technologies serve the most disadvantaged and uphold security and human rights? Our answers to these key questions will be determined by our ability to better address what I see as 3 essential paradoxes of the digital age. The first, digital technologies have in many ways united our world, but have also driven new divisions. No technology ever has had the same potential to bring us closer together and understand one another better. And yet, digital technologies have also given birth to new disputes, new borders and barriers, and a whole new domain, cyberspace, for violence and conflict. It has also allowed for hate speech and violent extremist content to be spread at an unprecedented scale and at virtually no cost. A second paradox, digital technologies today are far more democratized than any previous technological innovation, and at the same time, they may be fueling inequalities. As the developed world becomes more and more digitally dependent, it threatens to leave behind societies that remain disconnected. Almost half the world's population, over 3.6 billion people, the majority of them women, are still offline. The COVID pandemic exacerbates the disadvantages of those who are disconnected. They have less access to health, to education, and to jobs and the economy. Finally, the third paradox is the state of the digital domain itself. It is the paradox of a project that in its origins had as its primary objective enhancing access to public goods, and yet now is largely dominated by commercial interests. Commercial interests, more than knowledge sharing for empowerment, is shaping the digital domain as we know it. It is, in some cases, even if unintentionally, fueling the prevalence of hate speech and polarization that threaten its very integrity. If we want the internet to better serve the public good, we need to look much more at the impact of content and invest more, as we do, say, with public libraries, in content that serves to share knowledge and to empower. And better addressing all these challenges at the global level is the objective of the United Nations Secretary General's Roadmap for Digital Cooperation, which we released in June. The roadmap sets out a path today to connect those who are not yet connected, to better respect human rights online and agency, and to better protect those vulnerable to online harms and threats. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago in the Secretary General's Nelson Mandela lecture, he said that the digital revolution and artificial intelligence will change the world and the relationship between work, leisure, and other activities, some of which we cannot even imagine today. He also noted that technology can turbocharge the recovery from COVID-19 and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to echo the Secretary General's words. As we work together to recover from COVID-19 and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and as we look ahead to the fourth quarter of the United Nations first century, we need greater collaboration and exchange of ideas and best practices to ensure that digital technologies contribute to the social development and well-being of all.
Thank you so much. We're going to play the third video. Just 1 second.
Fórmula 1 marcou muito a minha infância. As corridas aos domingos, os grandes pilotos, aquela emoção toda. E agora estou eu aqui, me preparando para pilotar um carro de corrida.
Gato, você tá brincando. Olha isso. A largura do pneu. Nossa, olha o tamanho.
Esse capacete é o seu volante. Ele capta suas ondas cerebrais e traduz em comandos para a direção do carro. Direita, esquerda. Acelera.
Uau.
Você está pronto, Rodrigo?
Ah, sério, gente. Caramba.
Parabéns, Rodrigo. Você é a primeira pessoa a pilotar um carro de corrida com a mente.
O que vai colocar as pessoas em condição de igualdade é o respeito às diferenças, é a sua atitude.
So thank you so much for watching with us the 3 videos. I will now give the floor to my colleague, Ms. Carol Pollack. She's our Social Affairs Officer in my division for Inclusive Social Development at UNDESA, to give us an overview of the methodology of the event. Ms. Pollack, you have now the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amin. Well, Amin has already described a bit about the methodology for the dialogue, but to recap, in a moment, we will be dividing into 3 breakout groups. And in advance of this meeting, participants have been informed about which group they will engage in and provided guiding questions. Each group has some distinct areas of focus and some common areas. In terms of the distinct, Group A will focus on intergovernmental dialogue on sustainable and inclusive policies and building networks and partnerships. Group B is going to focus on sharing experiences and best practices on how technology is currently being used to advance sport for development and peace, and on suggesting approaches and ways that digital technology can help to advance sport for development and peace post-pandemic. Group C will focus on innovative approaches and strategies to make the world a more inclusive place, and discuss how technology can advance sport for development and peace in a more inclusive and accessible manner, touching as well on the role of data and on the digital divide. All 3 groups will also be asked to consider 2 common questions. The first focuses on how UNDESA can best support the role of technology in advancing sport for development and peace. Daniela has already provided some background on our areas of work, which include providing support for intergovernmental processes, carrying out research and preparing reports, and we provide technical cooperation and capacity development services at national and regional level, meaning that at the request of governments, we provide support for efforts at national level to advance socially inclusive development, especially through the development and implementation of social policies in the framework of the 2030 Agenda. We also provide platforms for dialogue, such as today's. So it is generally through these types of approaches that we would be able to support this work. The second question asks participants to identify 2 or 3 priority steps that could be taken in the near future to support the role of technology in advancing sport for development and peace. Here, we would especially appreciate proposals that take into account existing gaps and needs, and perhaps also opportunities that could be seized upon. Each group has a designated moderator and rapporteur. Group A will be moderated by Ms. Bass, and I will serve as rapporteur. Group B will be moderated by Adam Fraser, Chief Executive of Laureate Sport for Good, which provides a global portfolio of grants and capacity building investments, all focused on using the power of sport to end violence, discrimination, and disadvantage. The rapporteur will be Chisom Mbonu Ezeoke of Supersport and founder of Akoni TV, an online storytelling platform to empower and teach women how to produce, edit, and write scripts for their own sports stories. Group C will be moderated by Angela Ruggiero, a gold medalist and 4-time Olympian and former member of the IOC and now of Sports Innovation Lab. The rapporteur will be Richard Bailey, a researcher with great experience on the intersection of physical activity, sports, and human development, as well as the present subject matter, and who was engaged on the concept of the Kazan Action Plan. We will have approximately 40 minutes in our breakout groups, followed by a 10-minute break. In the final session, we will reconvene and rapporteurs will provide brief overviews of the discussion in their groups, followed by open floor discussion. And the outcome will be to identify 1 or 2 issues to translate into voluntary commitments to be implemented throughout 2021 as part of the UN Decade of Action. Now, just a word on the UN Decade of Action, because we keep mentioning it. So for those who are not so familiar with it, in September of last year, member states came to the UN headquarters in New York for an SDG summit. And already, this was pre-pandemic, but it was already recognized that the world was not on track to achieve the 2030 agenda within its time frame. So the UN Secretary General called on all sectors of society to mobilize for a decade of action on 3 levels. The first is global action to secure greater leadership, more resources, and smarter solutions for the SDGs. Then local action, embedding the needed transitions into the policies, budgets, institutions, and regulatory frameworks of governments, cities, and local authorities. And finally, people action, including by youth, civil society, the media, the private sector, unions, academia, and other stakeholders to generate a movement to push for the required transformations. So you see, the Decade of Action is something to which everyone can contribute. The dialogue will end with closing remarks from UNDESA, and after the event, DESA will prepare a short report that will be shared with you all. And with that, we will now be moved into our groups. We wish you a good discussion, and we will see you back here afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pollack. Thank you so much for your excellent explaining the methodology. So we are going to move to the breakout sessions. I will open now all the rooms, so you will see yourself in your group. Just let us know if there is any issue. We can again exchange you in the right group, but hopefully it's going to work. So we'll do that now. Thank you. So I think we are waiting for everyone to join and we will start soon. We are waiting for everyone to join back. I think it's 20 seconds, so hopefully they're back here. And then we can start our third part of the event. Okay, I think everyone is here. Gabriel, if you can remove.
I think we have a few minutes break.
Yes, Daniel. So we will have, how long? 10, I think we said 10 minutes, just to make sure.
Yes, we could maybe have it a teeny bit shorter. Maybe we can start around 2 minutes past 10.
Okay, so we will be back at 10. I mean, we can be back at 10:05. Is that okay with you, Daniela? Also?
I think it sounds good. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will go now for a break for 10 minutes, and then we'll be back
Sharp,
10.
sharp.
Yes, very sharp. 10:05. Thank you so much. So you can take a break. Okay, thank you so much. I hope everyone is back so we can start the third part of the event. So I think we can start, Daniela. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I think now we have concluded our breakout sessions, and I wish to thank all of you for your many interesting questions and active participation. So we will now give the floor to our rapporteurs to make their own interventions. I'll start with group one. Our rapporteur is Miss Bass, right? Miss Pollack, sorry. Miss Pollack, if you have the floor, if you can make your own intervention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Group A had a very interesting discussion on 4 questions. The first question was about examples of good practices and approaches and policies of technology that enhance the practice of sport and physical activity for all. And here it was noted that there are various types of technology. There's high tech and there's low tech. And the video that we saw earlier involving the car was an example of high tech, but there are also many lower tech options. And one example that was shared was an example from Japan, which has long used technology to promote health and well-being. And an example is radio exercise, which was introduced in the 1920s and has been popular to this day. It has been reinvigorated perhaps during the COVID period. It's broadcast daily by radio and TV with some newer options, for example, that people can use an app to do these exercises while also seeing their friends do the same thing through an online platform. And other low-tech options involve SMS groups to form a running group, for example, or a cycling group, which can be a safer option in situations where neighborhoods may be in post-conflict situations and there may be more safety to be in groups. There's also examples of organizations that promote sport that doesn't involve or require any sports equipment. Some of the important considerations that were raised here was the importance of considering inclusion of persons with disabilities and attention to the planet, and the role of media and broadcasters in changing perceptions. For example, last year's Women's World Cup, which was very widely broadcast and was perhaps the first time that women's soccer had such wide availability. And at the policy level, the importance of promoting physical education using technology to increase the use of sports by children in every context. The second question related to partnerships for sport for development and peace. And here, one example that was given was of how the Tokyo Games are working to be better together for the planet and the people, and are engaging in partnerships including in environmental arenas for energy savings and to enhance renewable energy, also cooperating with the UN and working closely with ILO to advance decent work through the Tokyo Games, and also working with the private sector in this regard. The third question related to recommendations about what UNDESA could do. And here, some of the comments were that the policy briefs that were prepared, one by DESA this year on sport and recovering from COVID, and one by DESA in cooperation with a number of different UN entities, which Daniela mentioned earlier and which is being launched today, which also focuses on the role of sport in building back better from COVID, that these have been well received. And this is a good way that not just DESA, but also the UN system can provide support. And that here the interagency aspect is especially helpful because then the UN can address many aspects of sport. In terms of capacity development, education is critical, not just for children, but also for authorities. So there is a need to have national authorities on board, and so to have programs for their education. And there is also a need in terms of international cooperation to identify good practices. So this is somewhere where UNDESA and the UN could have a role in making a compilation of good practices on how bilateral international cooperation can support technology for the use of sport for development and peace. In terms of priority steps that can be taken within the decade of action, several points were raised. One was noting the opportunity that technology brings to scale up existing programs. So, for example, if a project does not get visibility, it may only exist on a smaller scale, helping, for example, one village. But if it gets through visibility, through media, through perhaps other social media, it can benefit the public and the private sector more broadly to bring more attention to it. And an important example was also shared of using international cooperation in one particular country to support affordable and universal access to digital networks. And this is something that must take place alongside education and digital literacy. So this is also an area that could be prioritized for the future. And I will stop there for Group A.
Thank you so much, Carol, for your insightful intervention. I will now give the floor to the rapporteur of Group 2, Chizom Ezeaki.
Yes,
Chizom,
yes.
You have now the floor. Thank you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me well. Okay,
yes,
so for Group 2, it was sharing experiences and best practices and sustainable actions regarding how technology can advance sport for development and peace post the COVID pandemic. So we had very interesting discussions there, but most of the discussions was pretty much focused on the challenges associated with technology in sports development and how it is delivered. So a couple of people shared their experiences, and most speakers already had working experiences with sports and technology, and the fact that we are using Zoom at that time was already highlighted the key role technology can play in sports for peace and development, because a number of us have come together from all around the world to find solutions or put up recommendations that can be used. So we also heard about the use of technology in enhancing sports experience for people with disability. I think a lot of focus was put on that as well. And I think we can understand that, but it was also touched upon for people in general. And a very good example was put out for the use of audio descriptive commentary for people with visual impairment in the stadiums, which is already being done by UEFA, which is a great one. And Dr. Sarah shared a remarkable story of how Kenyans have aggregated digital content, because we've all agreed that digital technology can be expensive and inaccessible for a lot of people. But in Kenya, in Nairobi, a group of people have aggregated that content, and then they have found a cheaper means to share that knowledge with the larger group of people. And what they have done is that they have done that through radio, and that was pretty remarkable. And then we also heard another example of how social media was used with the Be Active hashtag innovation, which means that there's an opportunity for people, for messages to be passed as well through social media, Instagram Live, TikTok, Facebook, and so on. And of course, you have to adjust the message to suit people. Already there are a group of people who spend a lot of time on social media on those platforms. So it would be good to target them as well. And of course, we also discussed esports, even though a couple of people weren't so keen on encouraging more video. It does play its own roles as well, and it can be taken advantage of. So we also look at the challenges that we could face with using digital technology to advance sports for peace and development. And I think the biggest challenge was accessibility or lack thereof, because one, it is expensive. It was made very clear that it is expensive and that people in underserved communities do not have access. And also, I think it was interesting or very important that the lack of experts was also mentioned in all of this. So it was stated that we don't have enough people with the knowledge and the expertise involved in passing across these messages. And so maybe that can be done as well. And it was also put out there that even with all these challenges, there are a lot of companies that are also doing a lot to advance technology, to use advanced technology to reach people through sports. Microsoft was one of them that was mentioned with their game consoles, where children that can work for children with disability. So I think that was a great innovation. And BMW racing wheelchairs as well for people with disabilities as well. And all these things can be highlighted. And one of the recommendations was that the UN can also recognize and promote and congratulate these organizations that are already doing a lot to use technology to reach people in underserved communities and people with physical disabilities. And that maybe when that is done, then other corporations can see. So there should be a lot of light shed on them and people recognizing them. And also, I think this is very key as well from the group, because it was acknowledged that technology is a bit of a broad term, because technology means different things to different people. So when you're talking about technology in sports, is it equipment, is it clothing, facilities, knowledge exchange, education, artificial intelligence? So it is very important that this is broken down and be made a lot more specific, or a bit more specific. So that way people can understand, begin to have the discussion and the conversation with each subgroup or each issue that has to be tackled. So it is a bit broad as well. And then we also talked about the fact that it is very, very important that UNDESA must involve experts, even the companies that want to use sports or technology to promote, to reach people through sports, that they have to involve the experts as well at the beginning stages, so they develop tailor-made solutions to serve people. So it's not when it's done, then you find out that there are challenges. So a lot of experts have to be put into consideration. So that's a summary of what we discussed in group 2. So hopefully there'll be more information in the report.
Thank you so much, Chisom, for your insightful intervention. I will like now to give the floor to Richard Bailey, our rapporteur for Group 3. You have now the floor, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks everyone. In our group, we were looking at innovation, technology, and inclusion as a group. I think 3 themes dominated the conversation. The first was data, the role of data in these discussions. The second was the digital divide, the increasing distance between those who have access to extraordinary technology and those who have access to very, very little. And then the third was the idea of the inclusivity of these ideas and practices. So if we looked at data, there's an enormous amount of data available nowadays. Big data is possibly going to solve all society's ills. And we think there is a huge potential if it can be harnessed to connect people, to, for example, bring information around the world. Colleagues have already emphasized the importance of education through technology. And I think there's no doubt that the information that exists in certain parts of the world can now be shared and disseminated much quicker than it's ever been possible before. So there's the idea of connecting. But if we have this digital divide, then it's not really connecting the globe, is it? It's connecting those who already have access to these amazing resources. We also asked some questions about the relevance of the data and the fact that that at the moment, most sport development data is generic, and it treats all people essentially as homogeneous, as the same. If we're going to be inclusive, we have to recognize that certain groups have particular needs, have particular interests, have particular challenges. So, for example, the disabled community, their data or information on disabled people is rarely gathered at the moment. And of course, let's not forget that there is no such thing as the disabled community. It's a group of put together for convenience, and lots of different disabilities are put together there. So we need to disaggregate or figure out how to disaggregate that information. And then the third part was to do with developing skills. People have already talked about it in the other with the other rapporteurs, but the digital media that we have with us now really is an extraordinary tool for sharing information, sharing best practice, sharing ideas, developing this idea of a global community of sports development practitioners. If that happens, before that happens, we have to agree what is good. What is it that we're trying to promote? What is good practice? I've been involved in so many projects where good practice essentially was nothing more than convenient practice that I can access easily, and that's not good enough. The digital divide, obviously it's a problem. As accessibility increases, we'll be able to form new networks, new partnerships. And the only way to make that happen would be through partnerships and networks, connecting with people in different communities. It was suggested by me that COVID might act as a driver for the sharing of these technologies around the world, because all of us have felt the impact of social isolation, and all of us in these countries and represented here have benefited through these technologies. So it could be that the disaster of COVID becomes a driver for something good. What can the UN do? Well, as I said, I think there has to be a shared consensual understanding about what good practice is. It has to be based upon information, upon data, and upon evidence. I think we all know that's not happening very much at the moment. So we need an idea of the good. What's good? What is inclusion? What is participation? What do they really look like? And that's where the UN agencies become really important, because you have a unique role to reach out across the world, to cross domains. You can connect with, for example, Nike, Adidas, BMW, and so on, in a way that no other organization can. But also you can connect with countries around the world, and you can facilitate collaboration. And I think anyone who's been involved with UN agencies knows if you want to build a collaboration and you're backed by a UN agency, it is immeasurably easier than if you simply get on a telephone or on your email and try and build up your collaboration. So therefore, based upon what's our understanding about what's good, we need to identify, for example, coherent measures for identifying what works and what doesn't work, and identifying who's been reached and who hasn't. We need to identify priorities. We need to identify a coherent short-term, medium-term, and long-term plan. And we need to identify what counts as success. And more people playing sport cannot be the end of success. It's got to be something to do with inclusivity and positive experiences through sport. And that brings us to final points about the importance of teachers, coaches, and parents. All research is very, very clear. Teachers and coaches and parents are the main determinants of whether an experience is positive or negative. It's not the sport, it's the teachers, coaches, and parents. So unless we reach those, unless we educate those, it's just going to be more of the same. Or we have to have more numbers, more numbers. Most people that start sports clubs quit sports clubs. We have to try and break that cycle. And therefore we need research, high quality research with proper funding to help us get information about effective ways of delivering this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard, for your insightful intervention. Since we don't have much time, we will, we will open the floor for maybe we will take 3 comments. So the floor now is open, and please use the raise hands function in Zoom if you would like to add your comments to the rapporteur summaries. Thank you.
Of course, at the end, hello there, Daniela Bass here.
Sorry, Daniela, if you can unmute. Yes.
Somebody mutes me sometimes. Yes. I mean, it's not me. I am unmute and then I'm muted.
So you're okay now. We hear you.
Thank you. What I wanted to say is that we will then coordinate all the inputs received from the rapporteurs and share with all the participants, which are many, the outcome and what could be a couple of actions that we want to together to commit on a voluntary basis and carry them on throughout the year 2021. This would provide us then the possibility to meet again in 1 year from now and see what it has been achieved in the area of sport and technology and decide for another theme, always related to sport, not necessarily technology. We shall see. And so if there are any comments or questions or things that you would like to bring to the attention of the group besides what the excellent work done by the rapporteurs, please do so.
May I?
Yes, Georgia.
I'm sorry. Just to share some concerns. Now, the rapporteur, I think, did excellent work in reporting back, judging from my group. Just to mention, because we talk also about impact and data, and in all working groups, I think we had to identify also good practices and things that work. Just to mention that we don't really know where it works, because I mean, we used all different things during the COVID-19, I think, and tried to find ways that do work, but actually we didn't have the possibility, I think, in most of cases to measure the impact and see if in fact they do work in getting the results that we all foreseen related to sports for development and peace and the non-sporting outcomes. So it will be good to also, to the extent possible, for the year to come, to emphasize on measuring the impact of all these online activities that we do and see if in fact, you know, the goal is being achieved. So we have some data also on this.
Thank you. This is actually an activity we all as United Nations entities, we can discuss together and then see to find a common denominator to measure data. We are still in the pandemic, unfortunately, and it will take a teeny bit longer to get out from this pandemic. So we have time now to develop this methodology and start gathering data. Very, very good, very important. Thank you, Georgia. Anybody else?
Daniela, may I react?
Please do.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess that this is also more or less a comment that I made in the group number 3, which Richard very kindly brought forward, which is, you know, as much as possible, it would be nice maybe not to wait for 1 year to meet again, Daniela, maybe having a kind of, call it, you know, action plan, where, you know, with a selection of priorities very much also related to what Georgia was just mentioning right now, you know, trying to have some kind of, you know, specific tasks, and then understanding how, you know, we can all contribute to these specific tasks. So ultimately, I would like to come out of this meeting with a to-do list, And I know that we're all very busy and we're all very, very engaged in many activities. But I guess that, so if we are here is definitely to contribute, and not to contribute just by taking part in 1.5 hours debate and discussion, but also, you know, following up, or at least this I can speak for myself. Hopefully this is a shared vision by all the people around this table. And so here we need a kind of orchestra director, which is DESA, and ultimately we will be the instruments players that will make sure that the symphony will come true. But we need definitely a director, an orchestra director, so as to make sure that we will be able to deliver, Daniela. Thank you very much.
So what you said, Alberto, is let's carry on the dialogue throughout the year, and we will find the ways and means to do it without overwhelming none of us, because we are all busy, but at the same time, only through the dialogue we can achieve results. I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Someone else?
Yes, Daniela, if I may, Giovanni.
Oh, please, Giovanni Nicola Aiello.
Yes, one issue that, so I pick up on what Alberto just indicated, because we do have ongoing dialogues. I think that the fact that this has taken this initiative, and, you know, last week discussion was about going forward with regular communication. I think that we can pick up on some of those issues so that we can report back either to the groups or we will see the best way to do it. One issue that was raised in our group is the competencies and the skills to deal with digital both the device and transition, and we are working in another group on those issues, so we can report on the achievements of the results, so that we don't overlap. At the same time, it's the dissemination of information is even going further than what expected at the beginning. So I take the suggestion from Alberto in this way, and I bring to your attention and to the attention of the entire group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we also have a department of global communication in the United Nations Secretariat, so that will also then be engaged in this conversation. Hopefully we'll be able then to disseminate globally this information to reach everyone. So thank you very much. One more, if there is any, and then we have to start wrapping up.
Ellie Wolf, maybe you wanted to say something.
Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to make a comment about how powerful this has been as a conversation, and to really highlight the opportunity for those of us from different perspectives, from minority populations, from disability, from marginalized groups. And so I think that power of this conversation as it relates to technology and ensuring that the user expert and those that have that input can be brought forward at all times is just so important. So I just wanted to close by thanking you all for having this conversation and for including us, because it's just so powerful that all of this work around technology and sport can be that much more powerful by including these diverse perspectives. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I do not know if there are any hands raised. I mean, I can't see it from here.
I think
we are fine. So
we are fine.
I wish to thank everyone. As I said, when we organized this dialogue, we were hoping to have the response that we got today, and it proves that it was a good idea. An idea that now can become a small project, maybe, so to carry on the dialogue as it has been suggested. Our rapporteurs will highlight the content of the discussions that took place in their groups, of course, but then we will try to identify one or two issues that are of a common interest that came out from the three groups. And we do hope that what it was written in the concept note that we shared, that is that on a voluntary basis, then we could decide that we want to commit on a voluntary basis on that one or two topics that emerge as common interest, develop and carry them on throughout the next coming months, and keep meeting. We will find a way on how this can happen using the space provided by the United Nations. As I said, that the next appointment could be a side event organized at the margins of the Commission for Social Development next February. The theme, as I said, of the Commission, the policy theme, as you know, deals with policies and norms and shares its knowledge globally. In this case, on sport for development and peace. That's our commitment and request. So at the margins of the Commission for Social Development next February, maybe we could organize another appointment to carry on this dialogue. And the priority theme, as I said, of the Commission is now, it's a very long title, but I will summarize it by saying digital technology, well-being, and social development. So we will share the report prepared, and Amin, who has so well orchestrated from the substantive and also technical viewpoint this event. Thank you so much, Amin, and thank you, Carol, and thank you, Gabriel, and thanks to all of those who are not seen but are behind the scenes, making sure that this event was going to be successful. Amin can be our also reference point and person in case you want to join hands and be part of this event. We can create for next February and carry on the conversation. For those of you who'd like also to create your own event and maybe take advantage of the people you have met throughout these groups today and carry on the networking, and you want to propose an event, a side event on a specific topic related to digital technologies, well-being and development, or social development in this case, please do so. And if we can support you or be part of this event, again, contact us. And the deadline, remember, is I think the 12th of January. Amin, if you remember the days of the Commission, I think it starts on the 8th of February and it lasts 10 days.
From 8 to 17, yes.
17. So having said this, thank you all. Thanks to the representatives of governments. You know, we're still, the General Assembly is still going on. So to spend all of this time with us while their commitments, trust me, are extremely heavy. It has been an honor, and it demonstrates how important our work is in supporting their endeavors. Thanks to the private sector, to the academia and researchers present here today, to the civil society, and to the individuals and experts who contributed. Goodbye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. We end now the event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniela.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Oh, shall we take a family picture?
Yes, some of us left. We can take the pictures for the ones who are, if you can put your camera on. Just 1 second. So I think, yes, hopefully we'll do 1 or 2 pictures. We'll do 1 more. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay connected. Bye-bye.
Well.